I stepped outside and froze. The driveway was empty. My car, the one I'd spent years saving for while juggling 2 jobs and night classes, was just gone. And within minutes, I found out my own sister had sold it behind my back, without a word. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The silence after the call was the kind that sinks into your bones. I stood barefoot on the cracked concrete of our driveway, heart pounding in my ears, the morning sun mocking me with its quiet warmth. The space where my car used to be felt like a missing limb. I half expected it to reappear if I blinked hard enough, like this was all just a sick misunderstanding. But no, it was gone. Just gone. Stolen not by a stranger, but by someone who shared my childhood, my secrets, my blood. Vanessa had always been reckless. She bounced between jobs, relationships, cities, burning bridges faster than anyone could build them. But this was new. This was calculated. The tone of her voice still rang in my head. I had no choice. As if my life, my stability, my sacrifices were a lesser currency to hers. That car was never just metal and rubber. It was the graveyard of 1,000 compromises. I skipped vacations. I said no to nights out, to new clothes, to anything that wasn't essential. While Vanessa bought concert tickets and moved into overpriced apartments, I took the longer path. That Honda was my reward. My proof that I was building something solid in a world constantly shifting beneath my feet. And yet, she took it like it meant nothing. Not even a warning, not a question. Just a decision made in my absence, like I didn't matter. Like I was just a resource, something to be used. My fingers shook as I dialed my parents. I needed to hear their anger. I needed someone to echo what I was feeling. Rage, disbelief, betrayal. Instead, I got tired voices that sounded more inconvenienced than outraged. "You know how much she's struggling," Mom said, as if that explained anything. As if that erased the theft. Dad's words, low and patronizing, were even worse. "You live with us rent-free. It all balances out." Balances out. My sister steals the one thing keeping me afloat. And I'm the one who's lucky? The disbelief twisted into something uglier, something heavier. I wasn't just robbed of a car. I was robbed of trust, of dignity, of family. That was the moment the ground shifted. The moment I knew. This wasn't just about a car. It was about where I stood in the story of my own life. And apparently, it was not on the side they'd chosen. I didn't think it would come to filing a police report. But when you've been robbed, really robbed, there comes a point where principle outweighs discomfort. The title was in my name. So was the registration, the insurance, every piece of paper that legally tied that car to me. Vanessa didn't ask. She didn't knock on my door. She took what wasn't hers, and she left me without a way to get to work, without a voice, without even the right to be angry without being labeled cruel. I sat in the station's cold plastic chair, explaining to the officer how my own sister had forged a bill of sale. I said the words out loud. She stole my car. They echoed in my ears long after I left the station. When the officers came to our house to verify my statement, my mother didn't even let them finish their sentence. She slammed the door shut so hard the windows rattled. Her face, red, twisted with fury, wasn't aimed at Vanessa. It was aimed at me. "You called the police on your sister?" She spat like I'd broken some sacred code, like I hadn't just been robbed blind by someone they insisted I should protect. That night, I saw the Facebook post. Vanessa had written a long, self-pitying monologue. Some people value things more than family. I had no choice. But instead of understanding, I got betrayal. The comments poured in. Cousins, childhood friends, even people I barely knew, offering her comfort, sharing broken heart emojis, blaming me for being cold and materialistic. I read every single one of those comments with shaking hands. No one messaged me to ask what really happened. No one asked how I was getting to work, or how it felt to be blindsided by someone I trusted. I became a ghost in my own life. Unseen, unheard, unconsidered. That's when I moved to the attic. Not even a real room. Just plywood floors, insulation dust, and one small vent to keep the heat from choking me at night. I couldn't sit at the dinner table anymore. Couldn't share air with people who looked at me like I was the problem. And every time a bus passed our house, the low diesel rumble made my chest tighten. That sound had always meant freedom. Now it meant dependence, humiliation. The daily reminder that the one thing I'd earned through years of sacrifice was gone, and nobody cared. They said I was being dramatic, but they didn't see the blister on my heel from walking 3 miles to work, or the way I flinched when I passed empty driveways. They didn't want to see it. It started with a flicker, a single sharp realization that cut through the fog of betrayal like a blade. Vanessa hadn't just taken my car. She had committed fraud. She'd signed my name, pretended to be me. That wasn't just family drama. That was a crime. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than despair. I felt clarity. I spent that night digging through every message, every scrap of evidence. Old texts where she admitted having a copy of my car key. Photos of the title I'd sent to my insurance agent. A screenshot from a group chat where she joked about getting creative with money. I found the contact info for the man who'd bought my car. His name was Josh. When I called him, he was hesitant at first, but once I explained, his voice dropped. She told me it was a family car, and that you couldn't be reached because you were in the hospital. He sounded sick when he realized the truth. That was the moment I stopped waiting for my parents to see reason. I made an appointment with a lawyer. I didn't tell anyone. I walked into that office with a folder full of proof and left with a civil suit in motion. Then I sat down in my room, if you could call the attic a room, and filmed a single-take video on my phone. No tears, no melodrama, just me, my face, and the truth. I walked viewers through everything. My car, the theft, the forged bill of sale, the screenshots. I blurred personal details. I kept it clean, focused. Let the facts speak. By the end of the week, the video had over 10,000 views. People began connecting the dots. I didn't need to name names. Vanessa outed herself. She tried to defend herself in the comments, but failed miserably. Then others came forward. Stories surfaced of loans she never repaid, checks that bounced. Suddenly, I wasn't just someone seeking justice. I was a mirror reflecting who she really was. And karma? Karma showed up like it had my address saved. Her landlord posted an eviction notice on her door. Her boyfriend dumped her, publicly, saying he couldn't date someone who made a living off lies. Even her boutique job let her go, citing pending legal matters. My lawyer called it a slam dunk. We settled out of court. Full repayment plus damages. Vanessa had a choice: return what she stole, or face criminal charges. Either way, she finally had to acknowledge what she did. And for the first time in a long time, I slept through the night. The apartment was small, barely 500 square feet, but every inch of it breathed freedom. The windows stuck sometimes, and the faucet had a slow drip I hadn't quite figured out yet, but it was mine. The keys jingled in my hand like a song the day I moved in. I didn't throw a party. I didn't post about it online. I unpacked in silence, box by box, letting the stillness wrap around me like armor. 2 weeks after the case closed, I carried the last of my things out of that house. The house where I'd been told I was overreacting, where I'd been called dramatic for demanding the bare minimum of respect. My parents watched me from the doorway, stiff and unreadable. No hugs, no apologies, just a heavy air of disappointment, as if I had broken something sacred by defending what was mine. I didn't wait for permission. I didn't need closure from people who refused to acknowledge they had failed me. I moved in with Jenna, a coworker who barely knew me but had offered me her spare room without conditions. A month later, with part of the settlement, I bought another used car, older than the one Vanessa stole, but reliable. I drove it off the lot with both hands trembling on the wheel, not from nerves, from something deeper. Relief. And then came the quiet. No more tense dinners. No more tiptoeing around emotions that weren't mine to manage. Just morning coffee on a windowsill, the hum of my own routine, and a life rebuilt. Not flashy, but solid. Weeks turned into months. And then, out of nowhere, the message came. Vanessa's name lit up in a gray box. You ruined my life for no reason. I stared at it for a long time, not angry, not surprised, just sad. Not for her, but for who she chose to be, for how far she was willing to fall to avoid looking in the mirror. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, but I didn't delete the message either. I kept it as a reminder, not of what she did, but of what I didn't allow. Every time guilt crept in, whispering that maybe I'd been too harsh, too rigid, I opened that message and remembered. Telling the truth doesn't destroy people. Their choices do. And when you've been abandoned by the people who were supposed to defend you, the only way forward is to stand taller than you ever thought you could. Alone if necessary, unapologetically.